Una historia censurada. Alberto Rivera, ex cura y obispo jesuita. Este escrito está basado en la historia verídica contada por el propio Dr. Alberto Rivera, Alberto, Chic Publications. Alberto nació en España a una familia católica. A la edad de 7 años fue llevado al seminario por su madre y el sacerdote católico romano, Padre Abraham. Alberto estaba entusiasmado por ir al seminario puesto que había sido preparado mentalmente para ello por sus padres. Inclusive cuando estaba llegando al seminario dijo que ese era uno de los momentos más felices de su vida. Al llegar al seminario el cura Abraham lo bautizó y le dijo que era una gran alegría entrarlo por las puertas del seminario. Pero algo sucedió cuando él estaba entrando por la puerta. Alberto sintió algo que lo hizo rehusar querer quedarse allí, estaba aterrorizado, pero la madre, sin entender esto, lo obligó a quedarse. Al cabo de 2 años de estar en el seminario, Alberto recibió la visita de 3 mujeres que lo venían a buscar porque su madre estaba muy enferma, de hecho agonizando. Las mujeres, su abuela y 2 tías, insistieron en llevarse a Alberto, ya que el rector del seminario ponía objeciones para dejarlo ir. En este momento Alberto se aterrorizó por ir a su casa a ver a su agonizante madre, no quería ir, ya le habían lavado el cerebro, como hacen de costumbre en los seminarios católicos jesuitas bajo una intensa enseñanza satánica, y Alberto había cambiado completamente. Al ver que la situación era apremiante, el rector le preguntó a Alberto si el propósito de estar allí no era para asumir los más sagrados votos, y el más importante era el de obediencia. Entonces el rector le ordenó ir a su casa a ver a su madre, y él obedeció. Cuando Alberto llegó a su casa para ver a su madre por última vez, se la encontró tendida en la cama al borde de la muerte. Ella estaba teniendo alucinaciones y no estaba bajo ningún tratamiento con drogas. Ella veía cosas horribles, gente en un fuego, monstruos horribles que venían por ella. Cuando Alberto le dijo al padre Abraham que si él no podía hacer algo por su madre, él le respondió que su madre no solo había recibido los sacramentos, sino que también una indulgencia especial del Papa, una misa alta también había sido dedicada a ella y le había dado el último sacramento de la extrema unción. Esto es precisamente lo que les sucede a los católicos romanos que aman a un hombre como Dios en la tierra, el Papa. Mueren sin el Salvador del mundo en su corazón, Yeshua, después de una vida de creencias en demonios enseñada por la ramera de Roma. Teresa Romera Rivera murió a la edad de 33 años y esto marcó la vida de Alberto Rivera. Alberto regresó al seminario y se decía a sí mismo: el padre Abraham tiene que ser un mentiroso, todo es una mentira, los sacramentos no ayudaron a mi madre, la iglesia no la ayudó cuando ella necesitó ayuda y consuelo, me siento muerto. Entonces, arrodillado al pie de la tumba de su madre, Alberto pronunció estas palabras: mamá, si yo me convierto en un cura, entonces quizás encuentre las respuestas y tendré la verdad. Alberto sí encontró la verdad sobre la Iglesia Católica Romana, sus abominaciones, y él se convenció que la Iglesia Católica Romana es la gran ramera del libro de Revelación, Apocalipsis. Lo primero que lo estremeció fue la muerte de su queridísima madre. Ella era completamente devota a la Iglesia y nunca cuestionó sus enseñanzas, porque ella confiaba en sus curas. El próximo evento que lo afligió profundamente sucedió en el seminario tarde en la noche. Ya Alberto se había ido a dormir cuando alguien se metió en su cama y comenzó a besarlo. Sucedió que fue el rector del seminario, y Alberto le pegó tremendo puñetazo en la nariz. Cuando el otro cura llegó al cuarto para ver cuál era el escándalo, en vez de reprender al rector, hizo que Alberto se arrodillara y confesara su pecado. Esto dejó perplejo a Alberto, comentando que el rector había sido quien se había trepado en su cama y que él no había hecho nada malo, y preguntado que cuál había sido su pecado. El cura le respondió: tu pecado, Alberto, fue que él te ofreció su amor y este era el amor de Dios, y tú lo rechazaste. Alberto se quedó consternado pensando. Para mi asombro, el homosexual no fue ni siquiera cuestionado. Mientras transcurrió el tiempo yo descubrí que la homosexualidad era una práctica común desde los curas hasta los cardenales más allegados al Papa. El hecho de que la institución católica romana no permite el matrimonio a los curas y monjas causa tremendos problemas. Cuando yo estaba en el confesional, muchas monjas confesaban haber practicado lesbianismo y otras muchas confesaban aventuras amorosas con los curas. Esto provocaba que muchas monjas cayeran embarazadas y entonces cuando daban a luz mataban a las criaturas y la enterraban en túneles alrededor de los conventos para esconder el escándalo. Muchas de estas tumbas han sido descubiertas en España y el mundo. En 1932 se descubrió en Madrid, en 1934 también sucedió en Sevilla, y otra en la región vasca del norte de España. Los gobiernos del presidente Aznar y de Manuel Azana demandaron que una investigación nacional fuera hecha en todos los monasterios y conventos católicos romanos, en los colegios y edificios de las iglesias. Muchas más tales tumbas fueron encontradas en España y Roma. En 1936 los católicos de España estaban indignados y atacaron y destruyeron muchos edificios católicos donde existían estos túneles. Los médicos del gobierno examinaron estos cuerpos de las criaturas y reportaron que en la mayoría de los casos la causa de muerte había sido asfixia. A la luz de esto, no es extraño que la institución católica romana esté en contra del aborto. Estos hechos han salido en la prensa y se han hecho películas de ello, pero, a pesar de esto muchos católicos romanos rehúsan creer que esto sucede en su religión. Ahora tenemos el testimonio del doctor Alberto Rivera, un hombre que fue sacerdote y obispo jesuita, cuando se percató de todas las abominaciones, salió del catolicismo y declaró al mundo entero su testimonio, por esto trataron de matarlo infinidad de veces, hasta que lo consiguieron con la copa envenenada, tal como los jesuitas juran en su juramento de iniciación. Alberto afirma: sin el sacerdocio católico, no habría institución católica romana. Porque el voto más importante es el voto de celibato, sin el cual no hay sacramento del orden. Esto pone al sacerdote en un pedestal. Ellos afirman que Dios los ha favorecido con gracia porque han permanecido solteros. Si los curas se pudieran casar, eso destruiría el sistema, porque la institución está basada sobre ciertas leyes, canon, que dicen que el Papa solamente puede venir por medio del sacerdocio. No Papa, no institución católica romana. El Papa está supuesto a ser el rey de la tierra. Este punto fue hecho muy claro por Agustín, un escritor católico romano y padre de la Iglesia alrededor del 420 era común, en la versión original latina de su libro La ciudad de Dios. Nuevas ediciones han removido esta información para mantenerla fuera del conocimiento público. El Papa es el Sol, el Rey del universo. La Luna, los gobiernos de la Tierra, refleja su gloria. La Tierra es toda la gente que se inclinan en reverencia ante él. El Papa dice que Dios mismo le ha otorgado el derecho divino de ser Jesucristo en la tierra para secretamente controlar la población de todos los países por medio de la educación, política, economía y poder militar. Historia de la Iglesia Cristiana Vol. V. por Scaf, Pax. 28 y 32 publicado por Eerdmans, Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1907. El próximo gran impacto fue cuando Alberto tenía 16 años. El profesor estaba hablando acerca de Pedro, Kefa, siendo el primer papa. Yo hice una pregunta que casi me destruyó. Poco sabía yo que había retado al mismo papa. Para probar que Simón Pedro había sido el primer papa, el maestro había dicho que Pedro era la roca sobre la cual la Iglesia Católica Romana estaba edificada. ¿Cómo puede ser esto posible? De lo que usted nos ha enseñado, Simón significa arena y Pedro, una pequeña piedra. Entonces, ¿no es Jesús la roca? Jesús dijo: sobre esta roca edificaré mi congregación. Así que Pedro nunca podría ser esta roca. Porque después de esto Jesús reprende a Pedro y le llama Satán. El maestro lo echó de la clase gritándole: estás fuera de orden. Estás hablando como un hereje. Herejes son todos los que no están de acuerdo con las enseñanzas del Papa y la Iglesia Católica, aunque últimamente como la Iglesia Católica Romana, por medio de los pastores mentirosos, jesuitas infiltrados, le han cambiado el nombre a los cristianos protestantes a hermanos separados, para prepararlos para la unión del ecumenismo. 2 horas después, Alberto estaba en la oficina del maestro. El maestro le dijo muy apaciblemente que a pesar de que él estaba de acuerdo con Alberto, lo que él había dicho es muy peligroso, que los estudiantes nunca podían saber esa información. Y que algún día él, Alberto, aprenderá que hay muchas cosas de las cuales nunca se debe hablar. Por tanto, lo castigó y le advirtió de nunca decir cosa semejante. A pesar de que muchos curas conocen la verdad, ellos prefieren seguir con la mentira, porque el espíritu de Satán está apoderado de la Iglesia Católica Romana. Alberto cuenta: a nosotros no se nos permitía leer la Biblia, solo los maestros la podían usar. Una vez un joven estudiante me entregó un Nuevo Testamento. Yo tenía miedo porque no tenía el sello oficial de aprobación de la Iglesia Católica Romana en la primera página. Traté de botarlo, pero no pude. Si me hubieran encontrado con él, me hubieran acusado de herejía, así que lo escondí. La razón por la que uso anteojos hoy es porque por 3 años lo leía de noche debajo de las cobijas con la luz de una linterna. Una noche y leí estos asombrosos versos en 1 Timoteo capítulo 3, 2, 5, entonces es necesario que el obispo sea irreprensible, marido de una sola mujer, sobrio, prudente, decoroso, hospitalario, apartamento para enseñar, no dado al vino, no violento, sino amable, no contencioso ni amante del dinero, que gobierne bien su casa y tenga a sus hijos en sujeción con toda dignidad. Porque si alguien no sabe gobernar su propia casa, ¿cómo cuidará de la congregación de Dios? Y después encontré este verso. Él lo llevó a Jesús, y al verlo Jesús le dijo: Tú eres Simón hijo de Jonás. Tú serás llamado Cefas, que significa piedra. Juan 1:42. En este tiempo yo estaba tomando clases acerca de la historia de la Inquisición y me hizo odiar a los protestantes aún más. Aún alguna de la información me estremeció. Poco sabía yo que sería entrenado como espía para destruir las iglesias protestantes. Hoy la institución católica romana está ocupada reescribiendo la historia de la Inquisición, mientras verdaderos libros sobre el tópico han desaparecido calladamente de las bibliotecas. Es uno de los secretos más guardados de los tiempos modernos. En años futuros, Alberto comenzó a infiltrar denominaciones cristianas. Él había sido entrenado para presentarse subrepticiamente sin en verdad ellos saber quién era él. Alrededor de los años 1550, los jesuitas comenzaron a infiltrarse en todas las religiones y denominaciones. Ellos todavía lo están haciendo hoy y en una forma mucho más sofisticada, gracias al movimiento ecuménico carismático y algunas iglesias fundamentalistas. Los jesuitas ya habían exitosamente infiltrado a los primeros colonizadores de Nueva Inglaterra con las teorías satánicas del reemplazo y la dispensación. Ellos aún tenían servicios iguales a los de los hermanos de Plymouth, pretendían haber aceptado al Mesías y así infiltraban muchas iglesias. Y desde aquellos momentos el cristianismo dejó de atacar a la Iglesia de Roma y de esa forma está siendo llevado a unirse al Papa, la gran ramera. En España, la única religión permitida era la católica romana. Los curas locales notificaban a la policía cuando alguien faltaba a la misa. Ellos los seguían hasta encontrar sus iglesias clandestinas y los arrestaban a todos. La parte más interesante era cómo destruir a una iglesia protestante cristiana, destruir un pastor que decía que la institución católica romana no era una iglesia cristiana y que los católicos no eran salvos. En España solamente, yo ayudé a destruir 19 iglesias. Yo permití que me arrestaran en una de las redadas para que mi nombre apareciera en los periódicos como un hereje. También el pastor de esa iglesia me dio una carta personal, recomendándome como un fiel y confiable cristiano. Él no sabía que yo era responsable por esa redada y por él estar en prisión. Yo tenía 17 años en esa época. Con la carta de ese pastor yo fui aceptado en la Iglesia Bautista de Venezuela y después fui transferido a un seminario interdenominacional en Costa Rica. Mi misión era destruir al pastor, la iglesia y el seminario tenía que tomar tantos nombres como fuera posible y mandarlos a Roma. Estos nombres eran puestos en una inmensa computadora en el Santo Oficio. Ellos tienen en esa gran computadora absolutamente todos los nombres de todos los pastores protestantes y los nombres de todos los miembros de iglesias en el mundo, incluyendo a los católicos romanos. Estos nombres serán usados en el futuro cuando obstruyan la labor de Roma para formar la única iglesia mundial católica romana y los que se opongan, serán puestos a muerte. Y así bajo esta nueva Inquisición la institución católica romana reunirá a todas las iglesias protestantes bajo su control, y ya lo está haciendo exitosamente por medio de todos los pastores mentirosos, los cuales son la mayoría y muchos de ellos son jesuitas. Por tanto, las iglesias protestantes modernas están controladas por los jesuitas. Ahora bien, regresemos a cuando yo destruí la iglesia bautista en Venezuela. La mitad de la iglesia creía que la institución católica romana era una iglesia cristiana y yo les decía que yo tenía muchos parientes católicos romanos que amaban al Señor y que yo estaba seguro que ellos eran creyentes cristianos salvos. Y que aquellos que no creyeran esto estaban causando tremenda división en cuerpo de Cristo. Muchos han sido destruidos en su fe cristiana cuando los pastores los atacan. Causa todo tipo de confusión, distorsión y disensión, cuando los pastores comienzan a predicar solamente amor, como lo están haciendo ahora, en vez de acusar y desenmascarar a la madre de las rameras, la Iglesia Católica. Entonces a los pastores y a aquellos apoyándolos, yo les decía: oh, sí pastor, usted tiene razón, la Iglesia Católica no es una iglesia cristiana, yo sufrí tremendamente a sus manos en España, ellos odian a los cristianos. Tuve que salir huyendo de España porque me acusaron de hereje. Mientras el pastor bautista me estaba metiendo en el seminario interdenominacional, nosotros comenzamos un rumor que él estaba teniendo una aventura romántica con una muchacha de 18 años. Ella era una católica plantada allí. Ella le dijo a los diáconos que se oponían al pastor que ella quería confesar que ella y el pastor tenían una aventura amorosa. El pastor era inocente, su esposa se divorció, la iglesia fue destruida y yo me fui a mi próxima tarea. Las formas más importantes para destruir a un pastor son: 1. Desacreditarlo, 2. Aislarlo, o 3. Muerte por varios medios. 1. Destruir su reputación mintiendo acerca de él, torciendo algo que él dijo, haciéndolo lucir como el enemigo de su país. Meterlo en problemas con los oficiales. Tenderle una trampa con una mujer, ella sería plantada como su secretaria para tener una aventura amorosa con él. Una vez llamamos a un pastor tarde en la noche. En el camino pusimos una mujer en dificultades, él paró a ayudar. Ella gritó violación. Y su compañero estaba allí tomando fotos para destruir al pastor. Las agencias del gobierno lo investigan porque le ponemos una trampa de cualquier cosa, desde evasión de impuestos, expendedor de drogas, y cuando él prueba su inocencia ya es muy tarde, la prensa ya lo hizo lucir culpable. Estas son solo unas pocas cosas que le podemos hacer para hacerlo lucir un mentiroso, inmoral y ladrón. 2. Una campaña de chismes y cartas para decir que él es muy controversial, que es un alborotador. Aquellos que se oponen a él lo llaman enemigo, causando división, diciendo que él está en contra de la unión. Que él no está mostrando el amor de Dios porque tienen sus propias doctrinas y creencias extrañas. Él se queda solo sin pasado ni amigos. Una nueva mentira es difundida, que él ha tenido un ataque de nervios, así que todo lo que él dice es muy poco de fiar. Asilamiento es usado para forzarlos fuera del ministerio. 3. Cuando él cree que tiene un llamado de Dios y no se transa bajo la presión de los otros pastores, amigos y familia, entonces cosas muy extrañas comienzan a suceder. Él es atropellado por un carro, va a hospital y alguna enfermera le quita el oxígeno o le cambia los medicamentos. Puede morir envenenado, o ser inducido a tomar drogas que cambien su estado mental y es puesto en una institución para enfermos mentales, o puede tener una riña con un desconocido quien lo apuñalea en la oscuridad, o se le puede poner un contrato para asesinarlo con una bala, o la copa envenenada. Como pueden ver, la Iglesia Católica Romana está en guerra. El seminario interdenominacional que yo habría de destruir estaba en Costa Rica. 2 bellas muchachas fueron asignadas a trabajar conmigo. Ambas eran del grupo Acción Juvenil Católica, haciendo lucir que eran evangélicas, nacidas de nuevo, creyentes en la Biblia. Carmen habría de ser mi novia en el colegio bíblico. Marie fue asignada a destruir pastores e introducir sexo entre los estudiantes. Para probar que yo era anticatólico, yo discutía con los curas jesuitas que venían al colegio bíblico. Obviamente ellos eran parte del plan y reportaban todo al Santo Oficio en el Vaticano. Carmen y yo creamos un escándalo en el colegio bíblico, el cura jesuita lo reportó en el periódico y el colegio fue marcado como un lugar de corrupción. Por otro lado, Marie estaba haciendo su trabajo. Muchos de los 17 estudiantes que ella sedujo habían sido echados del colegio. Ahora era el momento de trabajar en los pastores. 3 pastores cayeron, uno metodista, un pentecostal y uno de la iglesia cuadrangular. La misión tuvo éxito, los 3 pastores se convirtieron en ecuménicos y dejaron de atacar a la Iglesia Católica Romana. Destruí el colegio bíblico, hoy es totalmente ecuménico y trabaja estrechamente con los curas católicos romanos. El Vaticano me sacó del país antes de que ellos descubrieran que yo era un jesuita. Después de este incidente en Costa Rica, Alberto Rivera fue llevado al Vaticano, fue ordenado sacerdote y al cabo del tiempo, obispo jesuita. Él era tan diestro en espionaje que fue puesto bajo el juramento extremo de los jesuitas. Alberto fue invitado a una misa negra en el Vaticano dirigida por el general superior o papa negro de los jesuitas, en un monasterio en el norte de España. Cuando él se arrodilló para besar el anillo del general superior, como es costumbre en el Vaticano, se percató que el anillo era un símbolo masónico, una cosa que yo odiaba y se me había dicho que peleara contra ella. Todo se estaba derrumbando, conocí todo sobre el Papa Negro, el general superior jesuita. Este es verdaderamente el que dirige el Vaticano detrás de la cortina, y era un masón y miembro del Partido Comunista de España. Alberto se desconcertó grandemente cuando se percató que el general superior de los jesuitas estaba estrechamente relacionado con los Illuminati. A causa de la gran experiencia que él tenía en espionaje, fue ordenado a unirse a las fuerzas ecuménicas bajo el Papa Juan XXIII. A los protestantes ya no los llamarían herejes sino hermanos separados, y los comunistas ya no eran los enemigos, para así poderse infiltrar mejor y ganarlos para Roma. En ese tiempo el Papa Negro era Pedro Arrupe, quien murió en 1988 por la misma copa envenenada. El presente general jesuita es el conde Anskolbenbach. El Gran Congreso Vaticano II de 1962 al 1965 trajo como consecuencia un decreto sobre el ecumenismo, ordenando al catolicismo a penetración, infiltración y exterminación aprobados por nuestra Santa Madre la Iglesia. Yo llevé a los jesuitas a los túneles subterráneos del Vaticano, los cuales se extendían por millas en todas las direcciones y en 3 pisos debajo del Vaticano. Había allí información almacenada por siglos, de los secretos más oscuros hasta los secretos de las armas más sofisticadas del siglo XX, reunidas de todas las naciones del mundo por católicos romanos, trabajando encubiertos en todo tipo de departamentos gubernamentales en todo el mundo. Todos los reportes de confesionarios del mundo, los cuales le dan al Vaticano una constante fuente de información. Reportes de inteligencia de católicos romanos clave trabajando en el FBI, CIA, KGB, la Mossad israelita y agencias alrededor de todo el mundo. El Vaticano es el cuerpo de inteligencia más sofisticado del mundo. El primer grupo donde él se infiltró fue los adventistas del séptimo día y los hombres de negocio del Evangelio completo. Después fueron los bautistas, metodistas, presbiterianos, etc. Todos fueron infiltrados, hasta los testigos de Jehová y los mormones. El próximo paso fue infiltrar todos los seminarios, universidades y colegios. Los jesuitas dirigen a la Acción Juvenil Católica, la Legión de María y los Caballeros de Colón. Ahora, estos grupos están muy callados acerca de Roma o afirman que el sistema romano es cristiano, por eso no vemos a ningún pastor exponiendo las abominaciones de Roma, la gran ramera. Ellos están ganando por componendas, por hacer que los pastores por los medios antes explicados se sometan a Roma. Casi todos los pastores tienen temor de hablar en contra de Roma. Si lo hicieran, aquellos jesuitas plantados en sus iglesias los atacarían bajo órdenes. Esta es la gran apostasía de la cual la Biblia habla. Nadie os engañe de ninguna manera, porque esto no sucederá sin que venga primero la apostasía y se manifieste el hombre de iniquidad, el hijo de perdición. 2 Tesalonicenses 2, 3. La gran ramera de revelación es el sistema católico romano. La profecía bíblica la pone en un lugar de gran poder en los últimos días, y después muestra su destrucción final. La falsedad de la gran ramera de revelación es expuesta. Los líderes del mundo con los cuales ella firmó tratados, concordatos, se vuelven contra ella para cumplir la voluntad de Elohim. La Biblia dice que ella será totalmente quemada con fuego y hay una gran alegría en los cielos, Ref. 19, 1, 6. Ya para este momento yo estaba destruido. Mi esperanza se había desvanecido. Yo estaba tomando tranquilizantes. Tenía que hablar en una reunión de líderes protestantes y católicos romanos en Guatemala. Habrían 50,000 personas en el estadio y yo cometí un pecado imperdonable contra Roma. Expuse a Roma delante de todo ese público. Guatemala 1985. En esa convocación en el estadio de Guatemala yo dije las siguientes palabras. ¿Cómo puedo yo predicarles a ustedes acerca de la vida, si yo estoy muerto? El sistema al cual yo sirvo apesta a muerte desde los confesionarios hasta María, el purgatorio, la misa, los sacerdotes cuales todos niegan la resurrección de Cristo. Yo no soy hermano de ustedes. ¿Cómo puedo hablar de vida cuando yo les he mentido, infiltrado y destruido sus iglesias? Ustedes creen que este movimiento ecuménico significa amor y unidad, pero en la realidad les traerá su muerte. Después de la reunión, los jesuitas agarraron a Alberto y lo llevaron a Panamá y de ahí para España, mientras le decían que él pagaría por lo que había hecho. Este fue el tiempo más oscuro de la vida de Alberto. Por medio de disciplina severa y drogas, ellos trataron de cambiar mi modo de pensar. Después de meses de fracaso, lo metieron en un lugar secreto en Barcelona, España para curas que se han vuelto de acuerdo a ellos dementes, en otras palabras para curas que han encontrado la verdad. El Santo Oficio o la Inquisición me había juzgado culpable de herejía por medio de la demencia. Me pusieron en una celda con paredes acolchonadas por días sin agua ni comida. Tuve que firmar cientos de documentos y responder a preguntas psicológicas. En la noche ya yo estaba tan profundamente drogado que no podía dormir. Estaba enfermo, totalmente extenuado. Después de 2 semanas de cuestionamiento brutal, perdí la esperanza y dije a mis atormentadores. Cuando todos esos católicos mueran a quienes les hemos mentido y ellos vayan al infierno, ¿qué le decimos a ellos? Ese pedazo de piedra, ídolo de María, no puede salvarlos. Lo que hemos dicho acerca de ella son totalmente mentiras, la Biblia lo prueba. ¿Ustedes creen que están matando por Dios? Pero ustedes lo están haciendo para el diablo, porque son hijos de Satán. Me fue dado tratamientos de electroshock y drogas potentes. Después de 2 meses mi vejiga estaba infectada, todos mis sentidos se estaban disipando. Al tercer mes tuve un paro respiratorio. Fui puesto en un pulmón artificial. Vi la muerte de mi madre de nuevo otra vez. Y yo sabía que yo estaba en la misma posición que ella. Estaba confundido con temor, yo sabía que iba al infierno. En el momento más oscuro, el Señor vino a mí y con las escrituras Él me dio vida. Yo le pedí que me perdonara. Inmediatamente la vida fluyó dentro de mi cuerpo. Él me salvó y me sanó en el mismo momento, al fin yo estaba libre. Salté del pulmón artificial y removí todos los tubos de mi cuerpo, pero me querían poner una camisa de fuerza. Entonces una semana después milagrosamente fui liberado, no lo podía creer. Y fui solo para Madrid. Esperándome estaba un cura jesuita que era un perro guardián del Vaticano. Él trabajó en mí por días usando todos los trucos jesuitas que él conocía para que yo siguiera sirviendo al Papa. Yo permanecí contándole cómo había sido salvado, y le mostré la verdad en la Biblia. La palabra de Dios tocó su corazón. Para mi gran sorpresa, él me dio mi pasaporte y me dijo que me fuera de España. Alberto, vete de esta prisión inmediatamente, yo creo que Cristo ha alumbrado tu senda. Síguelo, Alberto. Ora por mí, no escribas, solamente ora por mí. Esa noche salí de España con 40 centavos en mi bolsillo. El Vaticano estaba aturdido, ellos no podían creer que yo había escapado y ahora mi vida había cambiado totalmente para servir al Señor. La noche en que yo estaba listo para partir de Madrid, yo estaba sin un peso, quebrado. Tenía una maleta y un boleto de ida para Washington D.C. Yo me sorprendía como Dios había puesto el pasaporte y los papeles necesarios en mi mano para irme de España. Este era el único chance de escape. Mi corazón estaba quebrantado, yo había telefoneado a mi padre unas horas antes y le dije que yo estaba dejando la institución católica romana. Mi padre me llamó el perro de la familia y me colgó el teléfono en mi oído. Antes de irme del aeropuerto hice una llamada de emergencia a mi hermana menor, María, en Inglaterra. Fue un acto de Dios que la operadora pudo encontrarla en un convento católico romano en Londres. María estaba llorando, me dijo, Alberto, ¿eres tú? He tratado de cometer suicidio 3 veces. Ayúdame, Alberto. Y colgó. Mientras yo estaba tratando de ponerme en contacto con María, perdí el vuelo para Washington después de Cristo, solamente un avión estaba saliendo de España esa noche. Su destino era Londres, así que lo agarré. Solamente Dios sabía en el peligro terrible en el que María se encontraba y lo cerca de la muerte que ella estaba. Él me estaba dirigiendo hacia Londres. Llegué al aeropuerto de Heathrow en Londres a las 5:30 am el 18 de septiembre de 1967. Tomé una pequeña habitación en el Inca y comencé a llamar a iglesias protestantes. Finalmente llamé a la iglesia Anabaptista en Londres. Esta gente vino a ayudarme y me llevaron al convento donde estaba María. Ellos me dijeron que si no salía en una hora, entrarían a buscarme, tal fama tienen los conventos católicos. De la forma que me recibió y habló la Madre Superiora me hizo sospechar. Me pregunté si ella ya sabía que yo había dejado la institución católica. Me dijo, Padre, debo disculparme por no dejarlo ver a María, pero lo estoy haciendo bajo las órdenes de nuestra orden. Como usted sabe, este es un convento enclaustrado. El único sacerdote que las monjas pueden ver es al confesor. Yo le dije que rehusaba irme hasta ver a María, yo sabía que el Vaticano había notificado a la Archidiócesis de Londres. Entonces ella llamó a la policía. Entretanto llamó a todas las monjas para que impidieran mi ingreso para buscar a mi hermana. Cuando la policía llegó, las monjas pusieron un buen show, acusándome y llorando a la vez. Después de un rato, la policía exigió que me dejaran ver a mi hermana María, y me llevaron a su habitación. Ella estaba en un estado de destrucción total, llena de sangre seca de las flagelaciones, yo creí que estaba muerta. Yo estaba mareado y casi vomito del hedor de la sangre podrida. Después de mucho forcejeo, la policía me permitió llevarme a mi hermana y me preguntó si quería hacer una denuncia contra las monjas, pero les dije que Dios se ocuparía de ese castigo. En este punto fui puesto en la lista de muerte de Roma. Me llevé a mi hermana y ella fue cuidada por una familia de creyentes en la Biblia. María Rivera se recuperó y se casó con un caballero cristiano pentecostal. Se mudaron para Canadá y María desapareció. Fue descubierto que su esposo era realmente un falso hermano. Él era un católico romano miembro de los Caballeros de Colón. El doctor Rivera nunca más la vio, pero cree que está muerta o sufriendo a algún otro convento. Desde ese momento el doctor Alberto Rivera fue perseguido en Estados Unidos por la institución católica romana. Lo trataron de asesinar de muchas formas y muchas veces, pero fracasaron. Hasta que la última fue la copa envenenada, y así la institución católica romana de Satanás se apuntó otra muerte. Hermanos cristianos protestantes y católicos romanos que no saben dónde están metidos, y les dice en este día. Oí otra voz del cielo que decía, Salid de ella, pueblo mío, para que no participéis de sus pecados y para que no recibáis sus plagas. Pues sus pecados se han amontonado hasta el cielo, y Iu se ha acordado de sus injusticias. Revelación 18, 4, 5. Ten cuidado con los falsos pastores. Las escrituras nos advierten severamente acerca de falsos profetas, infiltrados y lobos colándose subrepticiamente entre nosotros, pero los pastores nunca denuncian estas cosas. Porque yo sé que después de mi partida entrarán en medio de vosotros lobos rapaces que no perdonarán la vida al rebaño. Y que de entre vosotros mismos se levantarán hombres que hablarán cosas perversas para descarriar a los discípulos tras ellos. Hechos 20, 29, 30. Los cristianos dicen que estas cosas no aplican para hoy. ¿Y por qué no? ¿No están en la escritura? Así que los cristianos cayeron en un sueño profundo. Pero Satán no ha estado durmiendo. Su ejército ha estado calladamente introduciéndose en las iglesias por años. Masones, brujas, homosexuales, etc., todos pretendiendo ser cristianos. El Papa envió sus tropas a las iglesias cristianas para terminar el trabajo. Ellos eran y son los secretos jesuitas encubiertos, la Acción Católica Juvenil, la Legión de María y curas y monjas en ropa de civil para enseñas y predicar en los púlpitos, diciéndoles a los cristianos que la institución católica romana es cristiana, lo cual casi todos los protestantes creen que es la verdad.
Of all this commotion, of all this immorality, of all this corruption, of all these crimes, this is different from the mother, from the system. These are individuals within the clergy, but not the system. And of course, the system is the one that created them all.
Has there been a certain promotion to create in the United States a special way of looking at Roman Catholicism?
Oh, yes. Yes, you mean
type of propaganda special for this country?
Yes, definitely. This is why they has been so successful here in the United States, being a country of a Protestant inheritance with a Christian beginning, right in the 1620, when the Pilgrims arrived to the northeast coast of this country, and suddenly today is making a concordat between the Vatican and the United States. Now, what that means, this is the greatest treason ever known to the very founders of this country. I mean, the most direct treason and betrayal that have taken place in this country has taken place, and the fact that now this government is looking for fellowship, for relationship with the very criminals that caused the greatest massacre in Europe, by which massacre and through which persecution the Pilgrims arrived to the northeast coast of the United States.
We were told that the United States would repudiate every principle of the Constitution, and I'm sure that that is not too far in the distant future. You know, an integral part of the papal policy was an organization called the Inquisition during the Middle Ages. It began in the 12th century under Innocent III, which was the most powerful of all the popes of that time period. The purpose of the Inquisition was to seek out heresy and stop it, but it used some very unorthodox methods. One of those methods was to force certain confessions out of Christians or others, and with those confessions use them to form public opinion, to raise crusades, to destroy the primitive Christian church. Crusades went out that destroyed people by the millions. We'll not know how many until the Judgment Day. But the Inquisition, the Catholic Church said, well, yes, there was an Inquisition, yes, we destroyed people, but it was part of the barbarity of the times. Others did it too. But of course, she claims that she's changed today, and Protestants are believing her. But you know, the Inquisition still exists, and it's actively being carried out. Beneath many of her large churches today are instruments of torture. I want you to listen to the testimony of Dr. Rivera as he begins to share with us about the Inquisition today.
In your training and in your life as a Jesuit priest for many years, did you ever come to the point that you were required to destroy human life?
Definitely. It's part of the oath and induction of any Jesuit that come under the oath and induction. And perhaps you care to know that I have revealed a great deal of this in this booklet after Alberto came out, the first part of my testimony, dealing with my minor seminar and major seminar as we went through these questions. And now you have in double cross, it is a revealing, at least a little part in these pages here, page, let's see, this is 12 and 13 at least, you see that is part of the oath and induction that I was taking as I swear to take the life not only of kings and princes and governors and mayors and senators and congressmen, but even my mother or father or brother or sister, whosoever, come to be between the interests of the Roman Catholic system and the interests that they pursued. What that means is, if a president of a nation is there to interfere with the interests of the Roman Catholic institution and their pursuit of power, they will be crushed. They'll actually, we were granted, I was granted that authority, that power, to exercise that authority, that power. That when any individual, whether he is a child, whether he is a woman, whether it's an elder man, whether it's a boy, whether it's a girl, whether it's a king or a queen, regardless of who the person is, when that person, that city, that nation, this country oppose to the goals of the Roman Catholic institution and interfere with, that already call for disaster.
What would you say has happened to the Inquisition? You know, right now we don't see inquisitional tribunals, but we know that the goal of the church is still the same, and the engine of the Inquisition was set up all over the world. What's happened to that particular department of the church?
It's still in force in one way or another. He said to this fellow, if you weren't a Catholic, what would you be? He said, the big Monsignor Segura said to him, said, if I wasn't a Catholic, I'd be a Seventh-day Adventist. And he said, Charlie, if I could get out of being a Catholic, I'd be a Seventh-day Adventist tomorrow.
Is that right?
And he said, Charlie, he says, I advise you, if you can, to be a Seventh-day Adventist and join them. And then just a short while after that, it was a time when in the spring they have Good Friday and they don't eat certain things and meat on certain days. And they were having to go way out in the morning early and leave to their work. And so they had a special concession of the Chinese cafeteria that he was in, or restaurant, that he would come down at 4 o'clock in the morning and fix their lunch and give them what they wanted to eat. And Charlie Hibbard says to him, said, "Why don't you order yourself up a good beefsteak like I do? You know there's nothing to that." He says, "Well," he said, "I mind to, I will." And while he was ordering up the beefsteak, he said, "I don't know, I feel funny about this." And he went ahead and they ate the beefsteak, and he had his half gone when 3 big dignitaries of the Catholic Church marched in to find him and tell him about some of the work he had to do. And when they left, Charlie Hibbard looked at him and he said to Charlie Hibbard, "You don't know what this means to me." He says, "I'll catch hell for this." And he says, "I used to be the head official that did the punishment for the folks that weren't living up to what they're supposed to. And if you go back to the great big churches in New York, you'll find way down deep in the basement where the corners are cut off like corner cupboards would be. And I was the one that took the people that was sentenced and changed them in that corner, brought 1 brick and 1 trowel of mortar each day, and their meal until there was 1 opening for 1 brick. I put in the last brick and the last trowel of mortar. And behind there's many skeletons. It says, "You don't know, Charlie, what this means to me. I was the chief executioner for that deal. And me to eat beefsteak like this," he said, "I'll hear from this in a few days." He says that I'm from that tribunal back there, and said, "You wait and see." In a few days, he got a notice that he was to appear before the tribunal in New York. And when they left on the train, he said, "Charlie, if I live after this," said, "if I live, I'll send you a card, greetings for your birthday." The card never came. I could tell you stories like this by the hours.
So the Inquisitional Tribunal is still active for Roman Catholic people?
It's still active, and it is for people that are not Roman Catholic if they get a chance to, without too much publicity that would damage them, their work and their cause.
Now in Mexico they opened up the cloistered convents and turned some of them into museums so tourists can see the torture implements that were used on the nuns. And I imagine that in backward countries like Mexico and Spain and some of these areas, this type of thing keeps going without interruption then.
It's still done in America to some extent too, in the United States of America. Yes, and I've seen in some of the basements where they're building some of their churches where they're preparing to put some of those things in.
They actually have cells and things underneath.
They have cells underneath, way down, not only 1 story, but stories and stories below.
There is enough left of the old Inquisition. I will say there is a new Inquisition today, not even tomorrow, is at work today, and here, even in the United States, and has been always. There is not replacement of a new Inquisition replacing the old. No, what happened is that the old Inquisition, as the years went by, under the sponsorship and guidelines of the Jesuit general and the Jesuit order, they has been changing their devices and their tools, in their I will say their devices, and their methods. You see, what happened is the Inquisition is the same Inquisition. The Holy Office never closed the door since it was established in 1200. You see, it never closed the door. As a matter of fact, within the Vatican, this is an office that never closed the door day and night. Today have a different name. It happened that they have a different name today, as they have different devices and methods to bring people to trial. Today, the Inquisition is at work. As a matter of fact, you have a book here that is called Night Journey from Rome, that we came to publish. A Night Journey from Rome is one of the last converted Roman Catholic priests in the United States, an American priest that was converted to Christ and his gospel about 2 years ago and came with us to the reading of Alberto, the first part of my testimony. He was Clark Butterfield, is his name, a Californian priest. There is the book here, Night Journey from Rome, and here is the most revealing thing about the actual Inquisition in the United States. He was so much aware of the reality of that Inquisition that in his own will, he prevented even his relatives, his own relatives, his own mother, his own relative, from bringing his body to the Roman Catholic parish the day that he was ready to depart to be with his Lord and Savior. And he almost prophesied in that will, because exactly that was the intention. Immediately that he was killed by the Jesuits of Rome in Detroit, Michigan, through a Roman Catholic doctor, member of the Knights of Columbus. Then you can see the Inquisition is alive and well, with different devices, different methods, and a different name. Today they call the Office for the Preservation of the Doctrine and the Faith. We were trained in many different things, from chemistry for poisons to warfare of any kind. And of course, we were not to be involved in these things. Let me explain this. Jesuits under the stream of an induction, they were not directly to be involved. They only were the elements, the intellectual element that will prepare this. The case of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the president, was killed by the Jesuits of Rome, but there was no a Jesuit there involved directly. Nevertheless, was the Jesuit who prepared the plot against his life and prepare and train those who were to kill him.
They arranged it.
Yes, it happened with President Kennedy, the same thing. The assassination of Kennedy is another fact that can be proved.
Adventists should wake up. Time is short. What organizations have now been taken over by the Jesuit order and other institutes of Catholicism? What world powers are in her hands to be used in this final chess game for the takeover of the world? We can get some idea when we look back to the Council of Trent in the 1540s through the 1560s. At that time, and during those years, we find vows that were taken by these secret orders to take over the education of the Protestants, take over their schools, take over their churches, especially to destroy the Protestant Bible by creating many translations, destroy the monarchies of Europe, destroy nationalism, to use astronomy and astrology to create new calendars that would eventually transfer the sanctity from Sabbath or Saturday to Sunday. Their goal was to take over the business world, internationalism. They were to take over banking, to take over Judaism and the movement of Zionism, to create political strife and chaos and all of these things for one end, that Catholicism should rule. Listen.
I did training in monasteries and convent where I prepare cursillistas, the Legion of Mary, the Blue Army, many of these militant organizations. I train and prepare how they can become Baptists, how they can become Adventists, how they can become Methodists, how they can become Presbyterian, how they can become Pentecostal, and all these areas where they most infiltrate any area.
You bring up one of the other questions I have, might as well ask it now, particularly the Blue Army. Is that in some way connected with the Fatima?
That's correct.
Is
yes.
that to protect it, or
that they are the army that creates the greatest promotion of that cult, of that satanic cult here in the United States. In every country, the Roman Catholicism display this promotion to the so-called Virgin. That is not even Mary, the Mary that we know in the Gospel, but a distortion of that really, truly Mary of the Gospel. They display to different militant organizations the promotional need for certain saint or virgin, whatever. And the Blue Army is the greatest promoters of the call to Mary here in the United States. The Opus Dei is another arm of the Jesuits. What that means, you have Masons, you have Illuminatis, you have the New Age movement, you have the Trilateral Commission, you have the Club of Rome, you have so many others. There are in different areas working through certain programs what they need in that particular area where these organizations move, whether they are secret or public organizations, they need to control certain area of certain people, and this is where and how they'll be ready to have them under control through these organizations. The Opus Dei mainly, they move next to what they call Christian democracy. The so-called Christian democracy is an outgrowth of this Opus Dei. It's exactly the words in Latin precisely define that. The Latin definition is for Opus Dei is the work of God. What that means, the Opus Dei. Opus meaning the work, and then you have how you call Dei, Opus Dei, the work of God.
When the Council of Trent occurred, it was controlled by the Jesuits.
Yes.
How about the Vatican II?
Now,
Is there a connection there?
yes, the connection is very, very, very prophetical. I will say this, I think that will clear the whole point here, because it's so prophetical that while the Council of Trent was the first council to be managed by the Jesuit order, the Vatican Council was brought about by the same Jesuit order with the same intention. And you know the intention of the Council of Trent. The intention behind the Council of Trent was the Counter-Reformation. What was the intent of the Vatican Council II? Another Counter-Reformation, but called today, how you call it? Renewal. You see the point? Now, the change was a name, but the intentions were the same.
Yes.
See, more sophisticated today.
Yes.
You see, the Counter-Reformation was taken through the Council of Trent. That was the entire Counter-Reformation was performed by the Council of Trent, decrees. Then through that time until today, Vatican Council II came about with the idea of renewal. That means another step forward, and the final, I will say this is the final stage of a Counter-Reformation.
Now, how about the charismatic movement? What's the connection with that?
The charismatic movement is serving the purpose, as we said, of one of the many issues. As we said about Saturdays and Sunday, they'll pick up every issue with different denominations. In the case of the charismatic movement, they pick up the charismatic movement because one factor. They could not bring under subjection the Pentecostal denominations.
They couldn't.
They could not. Even when they went through the ecumenical movement before, from 1945 down to our day, since this already started. As a matter of fact, if you want to know, the World Council of Churches started by financed by the Jesuits in Europe in 1945, after the end of the Second World War already, or by the time that the World War was to end, already the Jesuits were at work trying to unite all the Protestants in Europe. And that was the origin of the World Council of Churches and the ecumenical movement. Today the charismatic movement is serving that purpose. Where the Pentecostal could not be bring into the ecumenical forum, they brought it through the exercise of charismatic gift.
We were on the way back from London on the jet plane, and there was a man dressed in a uniform like the Catholic priests wear, and he was conducting himself not like a priest you'd see in a movie, very friendly. He was a very sophisticated type man. And people could sense that. And I never thought I'd see him again. But in Baltimore, at the airline station, where the baggages come off, well, I turned around and there he was next to me. And I just turned to him and said, "Hello, friend. Are you a Jesuit?" And he says, "Yes," with a big smile. You see all of his teeth. And he was very happy with himself. I said, "Well, listen, I'm very interested in the Jesuits. I've read some about them. And what would you think about the Council of Trent and what was invented in the Council of Trent and the infiltration of the Jesuits into Protestantism and the use of the Jesuits through organizations like the Illuminati and the futurism theory, the secret rapture that they invented for the Protestants?" And I talked to him about a lot of those things, and he had a metamorphosis take place. His face became rigid, his smile went away, and he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "You know quite a bit, don't you?" Like he never expected it. And I told him that you know, I was one of the Protestants that got away, and if he could realize that if somebody like me knew those things, just imagine some of the other of God's people that know those things and are willing to tell anybody about them. And it was an amazing situation how that man's face changed, and he thought he was like in one identity, but all of a sudden he realized that these dark secrets of theirs, they're being found out, and I'll never forget that. Would you consider that Jesuitism to be an occult secret society?
It is an occult secret society from the point of view that the Jesuit order, what you know of the Jesuit order and what everybody knows of the Jesuit order is not the truly Jesuit order. What that means is even the Jesuits within the Jesuit order, they all are not knowing the secret society, the inner secret society that they are surrounded by.
Spiritualism and the papacy is as close as two fingers are on your hand.
One cult that started from Fatima, okay, the cult of Fatima, the Roman Catholic cult, seems to be antagonistic to the rest of the Roman Catholic Church. Seems that they believe that the Pope that's in now is an antichrist.
The whole thing is that Satan gets as many people as he can on his side, and by starting something else up, he can get more.
Oh, I see.
And he starts first one thing and then another. That's why he's got so many churches and so many cults and so many this and so many that. What he can't get one person on, he gets them on another. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing that he gets most people on is TV. Right. Satan has all kinds of organizations. Mm-hmm. But the Catholic Church is his one biggest, most extensive organization that there is in the world. Yeah. He has these others organized to take care of things, but and in some places he works, even destroys himself to make other things work out for himself.
What's the connection between Jesuitism and communism?
Well, that's a long story, but really communism was really started by the Catholic Church, and the Pope himself is allied with them and a communist himself. They sent some Jesuits into a little town where they wanted to start Catholicism. Now this I learned from E.T. Babienko that worked with me on a lot of detective work that I did. And E.T. Babienko told me that after they had no success for a short while, they substituted the place with twice as many Jesuits as they had in the beginning, and after years they got nowhere. So they said the only way in the big meetings in the Vatican, where the headmen all meet, they said the only way we'll ever get anywhere in putting Catholicism in Russia is to take away the children from the parents and do away with the Greek Orthodox Church by training the children otherwise. And in their brains, this was all formulated, and they decided to put communism into Russia, and to put hard-boiled communism, which is Bolshevism, and later bring it on to a de-Christianized Christian Bolshevism.
So the connection between Zionistic Judaism and communism then is, would you say that's a fraudulent story?
Yes, to some extent, and yet they use the Jews wherever they can.
So the Roman Catholic Church utilizes Judaism.
They utilize anything and everybody to bring their means to an end.
So these writers that point to the international Jewish conspiracy, drawing from historical material that appears to see the Jewish involvement in all this, may very well be part of the Catholic ploy to take the heat off of themselves?
Yes, and that's absolutely the truth. And have you ever heard tell of this book that Zionism taken over?
Protocols.
Yes. I have one of the books. They're hard to get. I can get them if necessary for anybody. But I have ways and means of getting them, but it takes me a little while to get them. And when you get them, you better keep them to yourself. But here's the thing. When the Zionists got all that underneath, the Catholics got a hold of some of this material in these books. And now, what do you think that Hitler did away with all the Jews for? Is to get rid of the heads and the ones that would promote this Zionism. And they're doing what the Zionists proposed to do.
So they actually, in reality then, there is a Zionist movement, but the Roman Church is trying to take over it and control it.
Yeah,
for their own purposes.
They have a club of 300 at Rome that does nothing but figure out how they can do it and why they can do it and where they can do it and why they can go ahead. The war in Vietnam was nothing more than just using the United States to put in Catholicism into Vietnam.
What do you know about the organization of the Knights of Columbus?
I know too much.
Too much.
And too much to tell.
Oh, I see.
But I know one thing. And that is that they're a strong organization in the United States, and they have a lot to do with this here Mustache army.
The Ustachis?
Yes.
Are the Knights of Columbus also organized in other countries?
You bet your life they are.
Or are they financing the Ustachis of certain?
Wherever there is in other countries, they're organized. Wherever the Catholics are in force, they're organized.
Well, is the Knights of Columbus an extension of the Jesuit order?
Well,
but into secular society?
They all work with together. They're dovetailed.
Do you know anything about the connection between Roman Catholicism and Masonry?
They're tied in together.
Would you say Roman Catholicism actually manipulates and controls Masonry?
They've got to the place where they're in control of a lot of things, and they have a lot to do with Masonry. You know, one of the heads of Masonry, at the head of things, is a Catholic.
One night he told you that they run our church. Tell us about that.
His people run our church.
Who were his people?
The Catholic Church. The Catholic Church run all churches.
He said that to you?
Yes, yes.
And specifically that the Catholic Church runs the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
Well, very much like that. I don't recall exactly the way it was worded. This is the impression that I got from what he had said, the statement that he had made. We. He always whenever he said we, that was the church and he. He always included himself as the church.
From Jeannie's testimony about her marriage to a Catholic priest agent, we get a sense of the tremendous confidence that the Roman Catholic Church has now in her position of dominating the nations and its institutions. Very soon we're going to be locked into a period of terrible persecution, and there'll be many martyrs among the faithful Christians. Listen to the words of Revelation 17, verse 6. "And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus." She is uniting with the rulers of the world. Listen, in verse 12, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." Rulers in this world will give their political power to a system, a political system that will be dominated by the papacy. And that system is going to make war upon God and His followers. In Revelation 18, part of our last message to the world is to tell the world, "All nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornications, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her." That the governments of the world are in an unholy alliance with the Roman papacy, and God is going to judge them. I want you to listen very carefully to Dr. Hiram Duke's testimony as he shares their position in world politics.
When I was behind these locked doors, they told me that they were going to cede the South. And with what they told me then, I knew they were planning World War II. And I knew they were planning on bringing all the DPs and seeding the South with DPs. They've done it. They've got to the place now where...
DP is... What's a DP?
That's the folks that are displaced in the old country on account of war.
Well, one thing that's interesting is no bombs are dropped on the Vatican.
Well, my wife was the head stenographer in the Vatican, in the Pentagon at that time. And she gave all the orders and sent out all the orders to the big men. And she had orders to see that there was no Protestant flew over the Vatican and over Rome, because they were afraid that they might, through their own ingenuity, want to drop a bomb there. Are you aware that the head immigration authority in Germany was a strong Catholic, and that he let the men in that were trained in New York for the hoodlums that went over to do away with the Tsar and his outfit, and they were shipped by him into Moscow by getting one of their men into Moscow and shipped in boxcars, and this fellow in Moscow that got in there ahead went and opened the padlocks off the boxcars and let them out, and they went right up and did away with...
You're talking about Lenin and Trotsky.
Yes, sir.
Trotsky was trained in New York, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The head of a bunch of hoodlums.
Got to talking with E.T. Babienko about a lot of things. And we got in places where we wanted to know things. And we put on priest garb, dressed up like a priest, and he put on even garbs on beyond the priesthood. Well, because he spoke in 44 languages more fluent than I do in English, and his wife speaks 33 languages fluently. Why, and he understands enough in other languages right away quick, and he picks them up like magic. The General Conference used him for interpreter to go between a lot of these places wherever they needed him. And he went to Europe and went to Asia and a lot of these different things. And when he went to Asia, he was over in the Himalayan mountains, where it's so difficult to learn the language. He learned some things was going on in Europe, and he wanted to go over and find it out. So he took an airplane, and he flew over there, and he dressed up like a big head man in the Catholic Church, and he went in with among these other men, and he purported that he couldn't understand their language. They had to get him an interpreter. So they got him an interpreter, and he understood their language better than they did. And he understood everything they were saying and everything they were saying about him. And that way, why, he fooled them to where they thought he was a high dignitary, and he went in and found out things that he wouldn't otherwise. When he found out when he went to Europe that they were planning on getting rid of the Greek Orthodox Catholic Church. And one reason they tried with the Illuminati tried to put a bank in Russia, and they couldn't get the bank in Russia because the fact that the Tsar was too smart for them. And so they said, well, the only thing we can do is do away with the Tsar. And
what years was this?
well, this was way back in the time of before the World War I. They wanted to not only get rid of the Tsar, but they wanted to get Catholicism into Russia. And they were trying this before they tried to get the money bank in there. And when they sent, I think it was 1,000 Jesuits into Russia, most of them are centered around a little country town and a little place in Russia. And they tried it for over a year and they didn't make any headway. So they sent twice as many more in that area, and then they didn't get anywhere. So they called a big meeting over in Rome of all the head folks from all over the world, and they planned on what they could do, and they found out that the best thing they could do was to get rid of the parents taking care of their children, to educate the children, and that way, if they took the children away from the parents, that they could control and get Catholicism in there later. So they put in hard-shelled Bolshevik communism, and they said, well, we'll annul that and get it so it isn't that way later on, and put in a de-Christianized Christian communism. And they planned all this ahead. And he learned this. When he got this information, and they found out that they'd done this already, and that they take the children away so that they could imbibe communism into the children and take them away do away with the Greek Orthodox Catholic Church. And then they could control and later get things into Russia, and control Russia. And they'd do away with the Tsar and the government and the whole works. And then they planned on doing it in World War I. They dined, wined, and educated 300 hoodlums in New York to do all this, and to go over and take over the Tsar and take over Russia, and put this Bolshevism in Russia. Well, when they got it all ready, they had already gotten their man. The first president that they really put in was Woodrow Wilson, and they had gotten him in office, and so they told Woodrow Wilson, you tell England if she don't let those men in the ship that you've captured go on into France and things go on through, that we won't bring the United States in and won't do anything for you, and you'll be out of luck. And so immediately they let the ship go on into France and went into Switzerland, down into the dark forest, and the head man of migration was Catholic, and he loaded one of them on the train and got him into Moscow through one crook or another. And then when he got him into Moscow, he loaded the rest of the 300 with all their guns, ammunition, and money, $20 million in gold, in boxcars, and sent them in there. When they got there, this fellow that was in Moscow opened up the boxcars that they were sent to him, and out they come and went right straight up and took the Tsar over, and they were scared for a long time that they weren't going to make the grade, but they did. And communism was in Russia. Now, after they got that all done, then this fellow decided there's something going on, and I'd like to know a little more about some of these things. So a little later, he went over to a new part of the Balkan states, and went in dressed up the same as he did before. And he found out that they'd called the folks from all over the world into the Vatican to plan for things in the future, and that they were planning on putting a new war into Second World War, and that they planned and put Hitler in to do it. And he found out the reasons it was all done and why they had it when they did have was that the young folks in Germany were falling for Bolshevism and communism, and the young folks in the Catholic Church in Italy were doing the same. And they said, well, we've got to put something in there that's as near like it that they'll fall for and control the situation. And so they finally, after considering a lot of things and so forth, they said, we've got to do something because something's got to be done. They put out a magazine among these young folks to stop them from turning Bolshevik and communist oriented, and it was so bad that they decided that they'd have to do something, because Russia put out another magazine that told that way back before this they had controlled another country with the same kind of government, and it was in such and such books and such libraries in Europe, and they printed what was in the books and in these magazines. It had such a percussion that they said, we've got to do something else, we've got to control the situation. So they said, we'll put in Nazism in Russia that was born in their brains, and fascism in Italy, and we'll pick our men, and they had Hitler picked, and his face altered to do the job. They sent money.
What do you mean by his face altered?
Well, they altered his nose and different things.
Oh, really?
And then they picked Mussolini for Italy, and they sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to begin the situation, and it went through the Swiss banks into Germany. I know of that from what about E.T. Babienka told me. And when they got the whole thing started, it was all planned, fascism, and that's how Hitler got to be head of the German army.
What about all of his occult interests? You know,
well, that's all planned.
Aryan, Northern European race stuff, Hollow Earth, and all that.
That's all invented stuff that they worked out together. This Mein Kampf that he was supposed to write was hired to be done by a man in England, and he never wrote it at all. And as far as I could learn, and Babienko could learn, and then they went through with the Nazi works in the World War II that you all know about. And now we have a breakdown in the communism. It isn't the old Bolshevik communism, and Catholicism is being put in Russia, and our work is going forward because they couldn't let Catholicism in without letting us in, and they're still holding down on things. But they're using Catholicism to gain control of the whole world. Over 50% of the world is communist today. I'll tell you something else that you might be interested in, and that is that when Woodrow Wilson was put in, the Catholics brought in enough Catholics from Europe with the understanding that they were to vote Democrat to throw the election for Woodrow Wilson.
It's a pity to have even to say that at this point in the history of the United States, in the history of the presidents, has not been other president. From the time of President Washington, that was the first president to be utilized by the Jesuits. If you were not aware of that, President Washington already was initiated by the Jesuits to bring about the first communication with the Vatican ever known in this country. From there on, President Reagan, to all this time, President Reagan has come to fulfill the greatest the greatest moment in the history of this conspiracy, because no other president has come as close as President Reagan with the Vatican, and even not even John F. Kennedy. What that means is they have done to President Kennedy, to President Reagan, what they were not able to do even through a Roman Catholic president. And nevertheless, I will say this: the religious belief of President Kennedy is nothing more, nothing else than another expression of Catholicism. Perhaps I need to clear this. Roman Catholicism is not only the Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism is still, and it has been at work outside the Roman Catholic system. What that means, there are many daughters of the Roman Catholic system outside the Roman Catholic system. And as there are many daughters, these daughters have children, and of course President Reagan fit within that picture. His relationship with the Vatican today brought about several things. One of them is the diplomatic relationship with the Vatican. Second, the preparation for the signature of a concordat between the Vatican and the United States. And if you want to know, this never took place overnight. President Reagan was prepared and is here for the task that is performing today as President of the United States by the Jesuits of Rome, and the time that he served as a star in a movie that was very well known and still being shown today, a very old movie about the football team of Notre Dame.
Newt Rockney.
That's correct. This is the time that the first contact was made by the Jesuits with Reagan. Jesuits, under the stream of an induction, they were not directly to be involved. They only were the elements, the intellectual element that will prepare this. The case of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the president, was killed by the Jesuits of Rome, but there was no a Jesuit there involved directly. Nevertheless, was the Jesuit who prepared the plot against his life and prepared and trained those who were to kill him.
They arranged it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it happened with President Kennedy, the same thing.
Yeah.
The assassination of Kennedy is another fact that can be proved of any time that was ordered and by the Jesuits in order to get rid of a president that already was ashamed to the Roman Catholic institution, being a Roman Catholic. You have two different extremes. In Abraham Lincoln, you have that there was a man professing to be a Christian, solid Christian, and then there you have a man that professed to be a solid Catholic, but then put to shame his own institution when he was confronted about what he will do as a Roman Catholic president about the Constitution and about the interests of the Roman Catholic institution. When he placed the Constitution of the United States above the canon laws of the institution,